presidential candidate. Let's move on. Breaking news coming in this time from troubled island nation of Sri Lanka. And it's a tweet by Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Ranil Wickremesinghe, where he says, to ensure the continuation of the government, including the safety of all citizens, I accept the best recommendation of the party leaders today to make way for an all-party government. To facilitate this, I will resign as Prime Minister. Turmoil continuing in Sri Lanka with protesters storming the presidential palace earlier in the morning, and now, after an all-party meeting that was called by Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister, he has offered to resign after most of the leaders wanted that there should be an all-party government and not that of the UNP, the party of Wickremesinghe. And now reports coming in that Ranil Wickremesinghe has decided to quit in favor of an all-party government. Obviously, the issue of Prime Minister would still remain, given the fact that the all-party government perhaps would have ministers proportionate to their strength in the existing parliament. But what is important is that to facilitate the process, Ranil Wickremesinghe has decided to quit in favor of an all-party government, the leader of which would be obviously decided when all the leaders, the heads of the respective parliamentary parties come together, sit and decide. I think it's an imperative that the leaders of Sri Lanka come together to determine a stable future for the troubled nation, which is facing an intense economic crisis, which has led to protests over the last 4 months. Earlier, we had Mahinda Rajapaksa, the Prime Minister, facing the heat, abdicating in favor of Ranil Wickremesinghe, and now with protesters storming the presidential palace, going after Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the president, who has escaped now to an undisclosed location, following which an all-party meet was called by the Prime Minister to deliberate on the crisis. Now it seems all the leaders want that even Ranil should make way. Remember, he has been a Prime Minister just for 2 months. A lot has been done over the last 2 months, but still, the crisis is so huge and the mess is so deep that the Prime Minister also has not been able to make much of a dent. And now, under pressure from these leaders, and this is an exclusive picture we have of the meeting in which it was decided that the all-party leaders should be asking Ranil Wickremesinghe to resign, following which a unity government would be formed in Sri Lanka. Earlier reports suggested that Ranil Wickremesinghe has not agreed to the decision and that he has resisted it. He has said that he would want to continue and that he's better placed. But now it seems, giving in to the pressure and to the consensus, Ranil has decided to quit in favor of an all-party government. In fact, Faraz Shaukat Ali, editor of Ceylon Independent, joins us over the phone. Faraz, if you are getting me, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has also decided to resign following pressure from an all-party group which wants a unity government. You think this is the best move forward, given the fractured nature of politics in Sri Lanka? You think Ranil Wickremesinghe, with all his experience, was not suited for the job and that someone else can fit the bill?
Absolutely. At the moment, what Sri Lanka needs is an all-party government. And party leaders have urged for that. Mr. Wickremesinghe was of a different viewpoint, but he has had no option but to give in because the majority is against him. He is, unfortunately, although he is in the 6th term as a Prime Minister, he has never been elected for a full term of office in the past, perhaps denoting his own popularity or not in Sri Lankan politics. The need of the moment for Sri Lanka is to have some form of stability, and that can be provided by an all-party government in place where the Speaker will be the interim and acting president.
Faraz, also tell us, that does take care of political sentiment. But then the kind of crisis Sri Lanka is facing, you need experts, people who understand economics, people who can shepherd the country out of this very deep crisis. You think a unity government would have that kind of expertise at its disposal, given the fact that Ranil, after all, was a 3-time Prime Minister with fantastic existing equations in the neighborhood, and that he could have leveraged them?
Unfortunately, Ranil Wickremesinghe this time round has been unable to get much help other than what his known connections with India. India have been extremely generous in their assistance of their tiny neighbor. Approximately between $3.5 to $4 billion has been given, but you can't keep asking friends for an endless amount of money. What Sri Lanka needs now is political stability, and no lender worth their money is going to lend to a country where there is no political stability. And once we see that political stability is established, the IMF have already come and gone. Various members of Middle Eastern governments have been willing to take a look at Sri Lanka's problems, but only if there is some form of stability and an assurance that Sri Lanka will be able to come up with a plan to repay its debt and so on. So Sri Lanka does have the Ranil Wickremesinghe is not the only person in Sri Lanka who's able to do this. There's plenty of people with the necessary wherewithal to achieve this, but all of this comes only where there is a firm commitment to a stable government, and without that, Ranil Wickremesinghe or anyone else will be unable to achieve that for Sri Lanka.
Faraz, one more question, a very important one, in fact. How stable would a unity government be, given the fact that it might not have the mandate to rule? This is a decision taken jointly by leaders in a closed-door meeting. How stable a government can the Speaker really provide if that is the objective? And if not, then are we looking at elections in the midst of crisis?
The ultimate aim is to have a new mandate, and that can be achieved after some stability has been reached. The Speaker will be the public will clearly accept this interim arrangement, because at the beginning, if we have to go back to April, when the people were protesting for the end of the Rajapaksas. They wanted the Rajapaksas out. And although almost everybody of the Rajapaksa family did leave office, they remained as members of parliament. And the president, unfortunately, as it now turns out, the president remained in office, and the people were agitating for him too to go, because obviously they saw him as the big bad in this whole exercise, because after all, he was the executive